Hello, and welcome to another discussion in the SF Masterworks reading group. This group makes its way through the SF Masterworks in the order they were published as Masterworks. We read one book every month. Today's book is going to be More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. Nice. We're doing the book swipe that we usually do, except I never have my book with me. Uh, we are going to be reading the following three books for the next 3 months. If you'd like to join us either here in the podcast or just for a chat on the Patreon forum, please check out the Patreon forum if you're interested in this series. The next three books are going to be, as soon as I find my spot, Man Plus by Frederick Pohl for February, A Case of Conscience by James Flesh for March, and The Centauri Device by M. John Harrison for April. I think M. John Harrison we're reading for the first time in the series, right? Frederick Pohl and James Flesh are repeat authors. With me, of course, we have the usual group of friends. They introduce themselves and then we'll get right into More Than Human. Susanna, could you kick us off?
Hello, my name is Susanna Imaginariu. I write mythological slipstream and other weird stuff. Jared?
I'm Jared. I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and I'm also on the podcast Speculative Speculations, as well as film chewing and panel chewing on the page chewing forums. Chris.
Yes, my name is Chris Mohan. I from the Chronicle Chris YouTube channel, also on Speculative Speculations and film chewing as well. Lila.
And I'm Layla Goshi with Balladine Magazine.
Very nice. So let's do high-level thoughts on More Than Human. This one seemed to be pretty popular with the group. All except for me.
Except for Grumpy Vasha.
Yes.
Was there a book yet that all of us gave the masterwork rating to? No, right?
But yes, Earth Abides. If we exclude you,
yeah.
Earth Abides definitely did.
And
yeah.
Lord of Light.
Okay, so just exclude me then. Fine.
Lord of Light is
Lord
correct.
of Light.
Susanna,
Is it? Yeah.
correct.
Okay, Lord of Light. Fine. All right.
To be fair, it's my fault. I read it Flowers for Algernon very good, and that would have stopped that streak as well.
There you go. If we exclude you, Chris, Flowers for Algernon would have been a master.
That's exactly the point. Yeah, I agree. The consensus, I think, amongst the group is that it was Flowers for Algernon was a masterwork, and Earth Abides was a masterwork. Consensusly, there we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, sorry. So, who wanted to do a high level thing? Susanna? Did you start already?
Okay. Well, I loved it. I have to say, I was not expecting superheroes because it's pretty much what it is. But it's like the primordial superheroes, and I can't help thinking. I think, like you said on your review, Jared, that you wondered if X-Men was inspired by some of the stuff here, and I'm like, yeah, this is. I think so. I would like to think so because the similarities are many. But it's so psychological. It's so intense, and more than people with superpowers or the next stage in human evolution, etc. All concepts that we are familiar now, but back then I bet they were quite revolutionary and maybe even, scandalous. And it was this book was almost disturbing in the degree of sexual repression in it. It's almost like the powers came from there, and I can see that in superhero fiction as well, to some degree. Everything is overly sexualized, but here it was more an internal thing, a psychological thing. And I don't want to get into the Gestalt aspect of it because personally I'm not a fan of the theory. I had to study it and just I have my issues with it. I think it worked well for the concept of the story, but if anything, it was the thing that I liked the least because I was interested in how the character. I don't think. I think they would be fine on their own, not just the whole concept of being together, you know. So yeah, to put it in a way that might resonate with people these days, the two stories that mostly um, that that came to mind what I read when I read it was X-Men, and there was a TV series a while back, Sense 8, and it's kind of a mixture of the two. And I like both, so I was quite surprised with just the psychological depth of it, and especially at the end when Janie is trying to make him remember the stuff, how to deconstruct. That was brilliant. I mean, that I don't want to spoil a book that it's 75 years old, but please read it because it was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't like in here it's Homo Gestalt in in the X Men it's Homo Superior. I mean
Hmm.
both of those theories are kind of bunk, but the um but the it works for the story itself, and it's kind of interesting. I love the three act structure of this book and how the each each act, like when we went into part two, I felt like we started a different novel at first, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And I loved, but I really loved how, that it was somebody visiting a psychiatrist or what have you, or a psychologist, whatever they were back then, the and they had that, like you said, that psychological breakdown of the person trying to figure out who they were and get all this past and stuff like that, and then how it's eventually subtly ties into the first story, and then
Hmm.
the same thing with part three um, when you're once again thrust into a what could be taken as a different story, and then eventually it all ties together into one story, and I really appreciated how he structured it and how he put it all together like that. I thought it was pretty wild, and I read it very quickly because I thought it just kept me it kept the pages turning for me to because I wanted to know how he ties it all together, and I wanted to know you know what how that all worked, and so from a like from a um, just from a writing standpoint, I thought it was fascinating how he pulled it all together.
Yeah, brilliant.
There you go.
Oh, me next. Yeah, well, I loved it because of the multiple ways you can see how, um, not only how the story developed, but who the or what the gestalt actually is. I think anyone can, in some way, relate to it as, they came together as a family. Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. But I think also that it's kind of I guess, a trope too, in terms of like, you know, the company, whether it's Lord of the Rings or it's, Geralt's in The Witcher, had the Henza where everybody has a different skill or talent and they come together to accomplish something or to be something greater. So I think that's sort of the root of what attracted me to the whole story. It's like they've come together, and through that they are something greater. Um, but there is first of all, the sci-fi element. At first, I was kind of lost, on what that was. But I can kind of see, maybe it's pseudo sci-fi. I don't know. We can talk about that, the pseudoscience aspect of it. And again, just like Jared said, the structure. And I think, you know, I went from thinking, okay, this is an interesting story. Where is it going? But when I got to the point where he said this, this is a new entity. I forget how he said it, but this new entity, this is Homo Gestalt. I I kind of thought back to what had led us up to that point, and I just like how he was bringing it together. They weren't in-depth characters, but at the same time, I thought they were characters of interest. I was interested in the characters. Sometimes wanted to know more. We didn't get that. That's fine. Yeah, that's my first thought.
Cool. Yeah, it's such an interesting book because I was swayed by the idea that Jared had posted in his review, basically saying that it did all come together at the end. You know, what I mean, these kind of disparate parts seemed the thing, and I think knowing that really helped actually the read in some ways, because then it became a puzzle box all the way through. When you started the second bit, you started the third part, you were like, who are they referring to? Who are these characters really? Because they sort of played with the ideas that we knew some of the characters, we didn't know some of the characters, and some people were referred to by their names. Sometimes they were referred to by the characters' physical characteristics, by the racial characteristics, that kind of stuff. So it kind of was trying to put all of that together. I found this book quite different in some ways. I do agree with you, Leila, insofar as I'm not sure that the characters were super fleshed out, but this feels like, maybe alongside something like Flowers for Algernon, one of the most emotional books. There's quite a lot of emotional beats that happen throughout this book as characters do this self-exploration about why they're feeling certain ways or why they might have done certain things. And some of them were really shocking, I have to say. There's a lot of themes of coercion, control, abuse, all of that going through the story. And there were times where I just had to sit back and go, this is really doing things that most other SF Masterworks aren't really playing in this field at all. They're not really doing that kind of emotional storytelling in the beats. And the fact that all of the gestalt comes out of basically people who are cast-offs or people that are not seen as they're seen as less than human in society, and that they come together and make something more than human, I think is really, really powerful as a story beat. And I hadn't thought about sensate like Susanna, but you're absolutely bang on the money. I was thinking more something like Voltron, where they come together and make the super robot, kind of thing. The same, but I like the telepathic link that there is in Sensate, which is a show that not enough people have seen, unfortunately. But yeah, great.
Nice. Should we talk about the individual parts of the story?
Yeah, well, high-level thoughts from yourself, Portia.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. I think the thing I liked best about this book is the narrative style, like the three different structures, and what you said, Chris. I think the nice bit of puzzle that comes along with it, with trying to figure out where we are and placing ourselves within the story, especially the last bit, because I think between the first and second there was a very small time jump, and then suddenly it's 15 years later or something, and so it was harder to place, but then we got to figure it out, and we realized the consequences of the second story, like the realizations that come to Gerard from the second story, the consequences of that. We don't actually see what he does with them, just the state of fear that I think Janie and the others live in, that he's going to find them and use them for all the bad things that he wants to do. So yeah, I did like the storytelling and everything. Yeah, just like for me, I found the book for some reason maybe really boring, and maybe it had something to do with the fact that the characters weren't fully fleshed out, or I don't even want to say like criticize it like objectively, because I don't think there was anything wrong with the book. It was just me. I was bored. So it just wasn't my kind of story. So but there was a lot that maybe if I'd read it in a different mood, that I probably would have eaten up. Just right this moment wasn't something that I enjoyed a whole lot of, and there were elements that I appreciated quite a bit. I think the whole thing around Homo Gestalt and the implications, I think I kind of liked the discussion about morality, but I don't think I'm too happy with how they defined morality as an external influence of like rules. I guess we'll talk about that when we get to that section. Um, but yeah, like I had issues like philosophically with the book, but that wasn't the main reason why I didn't enjoy it. It was mostly that I got bored. So yeah, which is just not an objective statement at all. That's just me. So
Mhm.
It's an experiential statement, though.
Yeah.
You talk about, we often read for enjoyment, not for learning anything. And if the two things happen at the same time, that can be good, but primarily for enjoyment. So yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah. Chris, you had some thoughts yesterday about how this book had some one of the best openings ever. So maybe you
Oh,
kick us off with the first chapter.
best opening, maybe, I don't know, but shocking. Yes. So
Mm,
the whole, like, we had just finished reading Chrysalids, which I think the start of this book shares a lot in common with this kind of this society where you're not, it's sort of like in control, and the kids aren't allowed to express themselves, and if anybody goes outside of that kind of thing of wanting to express themselves, they're seen as
Mhm.
demonized within society. And so to have that sequence end with the sister telling on the other sister, and the father storming out, killing her, and then coming in and killing himself in front of the other daughter, I I don't think I was prepared for this kind of nice little story at the start, with a kind of this, what one sister's kind of showing the other one, you need to express yourself and it's fine, like, just be with me and do that kind of stuff too. Like, this, what really hit to me was the other sister's, the trauma that she was left with, because she said it. She's lost a sister and a father, and how did she cope with that and all of that kind of stuff. I just found that incredibly, like, whoa, I wasn't ready for, especially for something that you often at the start of these SF Masterworks, we're looking for sort of themes and ideas that are coming out, and not necessarily with these big, heavy hitting kind of events that'll kind of stop you in your tracks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought it was brutal. I was like, what am I reading? Because we've had books that delve into, the dark side of the psyche, but this one really, that opening, it was beat after beat. You really like, okay, this book is is not going to be light, but yet it was easy to read, thankfully,
Mhm.
but it was so brutal, and it's almost
Mhm.
like a warning. If you can go past this, give up. Like, I can see many people getting to the end of that first section and just like, okay, I'm good. Next, because yeah, very very strong.
Something I do like about how the book represents the characters is, if you do follow the thread of each character's story, um, it can be very dark, karmic in some cases. Like when the prods take in loan, and then when, I forget her first name, but Mrs. Prod, becomes pregnant, and so suddenly he's like no longer needed. He's dropped. He had been like a surrogate son because of the loss of Jack,
Mm-hmm.
and had slept in Jack's room, and then suddenly he's no longer needed. And that was very, I mean, that was one that I both loved it because it was so like bad, and I kept expecting him, frankly, to come back and do them in one way or another. But he actually performs an act of mercy, for Mr. Prod, um, when he sort of, you know, in his grief, um, over the baby and wherever Mrs. Prod went. Um, but then even that, there's sort of that another karmic level to that, where they throw him away essentially, and then it's inferred of a baby um, they did not want, because I don't want to say the baby was not, you know. That's actually a question maybe we can talk about. What exactly was he inferring by the description of baby? And I know it was another time, um, but there was kind of this air of punishment on the prods about baby, which is both objectionable and in our now um, way of seeing things, but yet it taps into like this really deep emotional core people may have when they're pregnant. Oh, if I do this, is this going to result? And so it just worked on so many levels. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of psychological levels, and that's not the only one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I found Lone's relationship with that couple interesting, and it was because you didn't know where that was going to go at first. You didn't know um, how that was going to end up because the beginning was had such bad things happening with the whole situation with the woman, uh, like you said, the sister, because the sister had some kind of telepathic connection with Lone, but then that it was just brief, and then they're separated, and then they go their own ways, and then Lone ends up with this family, um, and so you don't know how. Eventually, you got the sense that it was going to tie together later, but you didn't know how, and you didn't know. Like anytime you have that kind of character like Lone, um, you always you always wonder when the next bad thing's going to happen,
yeah,
and so there was this tenseness in his relationship with these people who were taking him in, and and it wasn't necessarily that you were worried that Lone was going to do something bad, but that just something bad was going to happen. And I always wondered, is he going to get blamed for it? Is whatever happens? And so I just found that whole situation very very tense and very eager to read about, and um, and uh, and how I forget how Lone eventually got back in touch with the sister.
Alicia.
Is that Alicia?
At least she,
Yeah, um, I think Alicia's story is she had
I was muted.
one. Oh, am I
Oh,
muted? Oh,
no,
um,
no, it was me. I was talking to.
Alicia had she had like a few instances of joy by dancing naked by herself, in the forest, as Evelyn told her to. But she
Hmm.
went between her father to, Lone essentially saw her dancing in the forest, began to use her for her knowledge. He kept telling her to go read books and then come back, and he would telepathically drain her, of her knowledge. But then when Lone dies, the rest of the Gestalt remembers that Lone said to go to her, that
That's
she
right.
would
That's
take
right. Okay.
care of
Yeah.
him. And again, ultimately, she does this good thing and she ends up being taken out for it. So I like that it stayed true to who Alicia was, in a sense that she seemed to always be someone that was at the mercy of external events. Yeah,
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 she
that's right.
she
Yeah.
barely had a chance. Yeah.
yeah,
I was I was so sure when when Prod was kicking Lone out that he'd come back and like murder the family, but instead he turned out to be really helpful and sweet and like help them take care of the house after the wife died and everything. He built that anti-gravity vehicle for him. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was surprising. Yeah.
there was the only thing that I'm not sure I got it right. Maybe there was something I missed because um, the couple they were so kind to him. They took him in, a grown man in that state, and they, pretty much raised him because he was a baby in the point, and
Mhm.
they never gave up on him. Imagine the amount of work and time and patience and dedication. And then they finally get the baby that they wanted, and it turns out to be, well, I guess disappointing. Let's put it this way. And they gave up. So they didn't give up on London. So I think part of it was the same way that he was, he's referred as an idiot, but he never starved. He always had the ability to make people take care of him. So I question just actually how kind and charitable the couple really was, or if it was Lone inadvertently using his power on them the way that he did before when he was begging, because he never asked for more than he needed, but he never went hungry, and he never went cold. He always had the way to make people do what he wanted, what he needed. So
I
to
love
some
that.
degree,
I love that way of looking at it, because I kind of thought that of the prods as, sort of a comment on how people can always keep that image of perfection in their mind. Jack was the perfect baby. As long as that perfect image is out there somewhere, they'll settle for this. Or and when baby was born, that they just snapped. But I like your idea better. I like your.
yeah, because it was his power, and the difference between him and what's his name? I'm terrible with names. I have to put the names up. Jerry
Oh yeah.
was that Lone. He was a nice guy. He was using his power almost without realizing for most of his life, right? Jerry, he knew exactly the power he had, and he used it and abused it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like how they set it, the morality of the prods and of Lone. The fact that they did take him in and raise him. They did discard Lone when they had their own biological child, but Lone was already seen as imperfect by society anyway, and much the same way as they viewed their own child when it came along, and discarded him. So they were sort of consistent, but there was this kind of this idea. It wasn't confirmed later when they met Prod again that they had just accepted that their child had died, rather than that it did not die, but that the child was dead because it was sort of imperfect again. And I think they were sort of showing that they either hadn't the fortitude or the understanding to accept the kind of not perfect life, if you know what I mean. They couldn't handle that, and they sort of ran away from it. But they weren't seen as necessarily bad people, and you can actually see how Lone's morality came partly from the prods as well, because of that. It was consistent in that way. And you're right, like society was judging Lone as being as a half-wit, constantly referred to as a half-wit throughout the book, but he was incredibly self-sufficient. He never starved. In fact, even when the rest of the kids came to meet him in the cave, he was making himself a very hearty dinner, he killed game, he was cooking it, he could do all of those things. It was just about how people projected what he could do by how he looked and how he presented himself to them, and the mistakes that are made from that, which sort of comes full circle with the end of the book when they talk about the Gestalt and the fact that the sum of the parts being greater than the one, and they were sort of going to could wipe out humanity in their own way, by how they view, and the ethics and all that comes around. I'm sure we'll come to that, but I thought that was really interesting about how the morality of both Lone and Prods came out, especially when it came to making the anti-gravity device and all of that kind of stuff. It was all just for good. And then you contrast Lone with Jerry, who was coming in chapter 2.
Yeah, I like that. And this reminds me, Lone and Baby and even the others in the Gestalt, they weren't appreciated for the gifts that they did have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's very, and that's how it relates. Kind of, that's very X-Men like they're not appreciated for what they are able to do. and it's not. And they're more feared than anything else. They uh, even when um, even when they get let into Alicia's house, and just like she first looks at them all like, ah, the horror. Look at these kids. They're dirty. They're unkempt. They have no manners. They all of a sudden one of them is popping across the room and teleporting across the room, and which is hilarious. And the uh so that instead of seeing that and saying, wow, that's something amazing, it's more of a like, ah, that's horrible, you're not normal, cut it out. and
Yeah.
so I it's a very interesting, that was a very interesting exploration of that part of it, that no matter what amazing things that these people could do, if they're not a part of the normal society, they won't be accepted. It doesn't matter how amazing it is.
Mhm.
Mhm. Like Jenny's own mother finds her creepy and she freely talks to people about that. I don't remember if we had a scene where Janie overheard that, but I think she definitely senses how her mother feels about her. And she had to find safety with the twins. And I I don't think I caught how she ended up just wandering the forest. What happened there before she found Lone?
Who,
I
Alicia?
thought she ran away.
Janie
I,
and the twins.
yeah, they all ran away together, didn't they?
Yeah,
Because they,
Oh,
they,
they ran
they, they
away.
were sort of excluded from the apartment building or whatever they were together.
I
They
see.
sort of
Okay.
they found friendship and kinship there, and they were sort of looked down on by their elders and their parents and
Mm,
that kind of stuff. So they kind of escaped together, and then
okay.
they starved until they got the loan. Then they
Mm,
created this first part of the gestalt, if you want.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. And he found them the same way that he found Alicia's sister, right? Like they sense their mental need for help or something?
Uh,
Or did
As
they want
far
to
as I
leave the
remember, they
cave?
followed him back to the cave because he'd food.
Okay.
Initially, our
Mm,
Bonnie but the twins certainly did, and then
Mhm.
Janie came along afterwards to find them, and then seen him, and then kind of was this link
got
between
it.
them all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
makes sense.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah. But maybe of course, there was some telepathy involved.
yeah.
I love the way how Jenny, she was so mean to the the twins, and then they got even, and then she realized, okay, this is interesting. I can relate to these girls. Let's be friends.
Yeah,
you, you found the equal. That was pretty cool. And then you get an insight into her character a bit more, that she wasn't just a spoiled brat. That she was really looking for connection. I also like that when they teleported, they had to teleport naked, because yeah,
yes,
that is the way it should be. Either way.
yes. Yeah, when you think about it, it doesn't make sense any other way, like scientifically. And
Exactly. And how it can be an hindrance. You're like, oh, I can teleport anywhere. Yeah, but you can take clothes with you. Ah, right. Oops.
and I loved how that kind of resolved with Jerry cheating in the exams. There's a little black naked girl in the toilet. That's
Yeah.
but it's just, it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Jerry, I think the second section was maybe the most gripping read for me out of the three. Maybe the first person narrative helped with trying to figure out who he was or how he became acquainted with the group. I think that was pretty cool. What did you guys think of Jerry?
I really like that section. That's the section that really sucked me into the book, as mainly because first of all, you're just starting out with like this new setting. He's in a he's he's seeing this stern guy who's like this psychologist, whatever, and he's um and you're just starting off with this completely new setting. But I love how, like, I love how he's breaking down his defenses as they're talking, and how he just keeps poking in the right places, and he keeps digging and digging, and how and I love how the story of Jerry's story was eventually coming out in these episodes, and I think that I just thought it was really cool how, and I thought it was really tense as well, because you didn't know if eventually you didn't know how Jerry was going to if he was going to snap or blow up or just lose his shit, and and the uh and but eventually it just I think he I forget how it ended exactly, but
He
but I
he
just
kind of snaps. He remembers what he did. We kind of shift the point of view. So he's like living it through. There was a moment when he's living the events through the eyes of Alicia, and then switches back. But that whole sequence was genius. Like the psychiatrist, he was amazing. He was doing everything spot on. He was just dealing with the mind that could never be properly psychoanalyzed. But what he did, like the
yeah
science there was spot on, and how he then shifts. Mm. Yeah,
yeah
I didn't see that one coming. I was like, where is this going? How, why? And then it's been a while until it was a part of the book where things kind of got a bit mellow, where it felt like, oh, there's nothing brutal going on, and then bang, just here it is, just in case you relax. And,
Yeah.
so clever.
yeah yeah very very cool.
Yeah. And there's that trope that kind of comes again. This book's 53, but a trope that has been used in movies 1,000,000,000 times. This idea of the word association with baby was 3, and the kind of use of that over and over again
Yeah.
as a repetitive thing, and us trying to make sense of what was baby's 3. And then when they actually put it in context of the thing, as a reader, you're like, oh my god, yes, okay, right, I get what's
Yeah.
happening here, and then associating that with the murder then of
Yeah.
Alicia at the same time. It was like a really well done revelation in the book because of how they did it literally through the book. It was really powerful. I really enjoyed that.
But it is exactly how it works.
Yeah.
Why it was so accurate, and using that as a plot device as well. It's genius.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've been trying to think. The group itself, was it? And I keep kind of obsessing over baby. So baby is really the brains of the group. So how would do the others represent different abilities of the body or aspects of the body?
I didn't really get it like that, actually, Leila, because you would think like the arms and the legs, etc. But if you think of the chain, baby could only talk to Janie. Because without Janie in the link, nobody else could really talk to and speak to Janie in that way. So it was almost like a chain of information going on. Jerry could control the rest of the world, you know what I mean, with his eyes, and he could interface with other people. Janie couldn't do that. But so each by themselves, like baby laying on the table, couldn't do anything. Like it was almost described as the mongoloid in the story, that nobody could do. But again, put them all together in a link in a chain, and they became kind of this very powerful, almost unstoppable. They sort of subverted all of humanity in the way that they worked in some ways. But you'd remove one of the chains out, which is the idea of the Gestalt, and it doesn't function in the same way. But that's why the key bit at the end, when they said, well, actually, can we be replaced? Can this chain and link be replaced? And the answer being yes. It was this big revelation then that this would grow more parts, or each of the pieces were replaceable in some way, and therefore it could keep on functioning without the individual, which was where we were sort of
Right.
halfway through chapter 3.
Because Jerry replaced Lone, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that eventually they would find another piece to fill in the link if they needed to.
And they talked about that as immortality then, this idea that they would all live forever because those skills and those kind of pieces that put together could sustain then beyond the human body in a way that's different from humanity.
Yeah, that. Sorry, go ahead, Lila.
No, so you mean the group would live forever? The group
Mhm.
lives forever.
Yep.
Because from that,
But not, and not
I
just the group. I think I can see other groups forming with different abilities.
similar abilities. Something I was thinking as you were describing that, Chris, is, as you said, Janie is like, to me, Janie is like the nervous system. I mean, she's tapped into the brain, and then Jerry is like
I like
the
that.
eyes. I couldn't quite, is Lone like the skin? I mean, he's like the outer representation. I don't know. I was going deep down the rabbit hole, but
Interesting.
it could be nothing too. It could be nothing.
I think they did refer to Bonnie and Beanie at some point as
But-
hands.
Other just aspects.
Yeah, I think they did as the mobile aspect of it.
Yeah.
But then that would make Jerry the body. Because you already have a brain. How would that work?
The eyes, I just thought was associated
Definitely
Jerry
not
with the
the
eyes,
heart.
so we could see the outside world and interface on that part. But Lone did that, as we said beforehand, and you see actually how much even Jerry misses Lone when Lone's out of the group. The group. Lone's also the moral center. He's also the person that has the morality because he was the one that was effectively raised. If you know what I mean, he was the one reared, and again, that idea of ethics and morality kind of comes in. He had the morality because he was parented and got it from his parents, the prods, so to speak. Whereas the other kids didn't. They didn't have any of that, so they didn't feel things like shame and all that kind of stuff.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I was sort of hoping that Lone was going to actually be alive. I had that hope all the way through the book.
Yeah.
It was such a long time, and I was like, what? How? When? Why? Okay.
Yeah,
It
he was just
such
gone.
Just done.
Time passed. He slipped and fell basically, and then went because he was the heart of the group. He was the one that kept them all right. He's the one that fed them at the start. That was again. He's the provider, the supplier, but also the almost like the father of the group because he was the first. In some ways, to show them some leadership, and then when he went away, there was kind of this like dark part where Jerry was protecting the group, but he did it by murdering Alicia. He did it by protecting them, from the outside world, from the almost like a fear element, as you would because he had greater powers and greater influence, and he could exert that over people. And that stage, whereas Lone obviously did it somewhere very differently.
Where do you think, where do you think Evelyn would have fit in if she had lived? Because it seemed that Lone and Evelyn had the deepest connection of anyone else Lone had met. So, would he have needed anyone else, or would that have overwhelmed his sensibilities toward anyone else?
Yeah. It's a good question where Evelyn, because we never really got much of a sense of what Evelyn's power was. Maybe something like she was a battery of some sort. She got the energy. She seemed to be this idea that she wanted to express her sexuality. You referred to it at the start, actually, Susanna, about the sexual repression kind of element of it and how that's seen as evil, etc. But we don't get a sense of how that was going to manifest for her in terms of because again, they're very young kids. All of these, they didn't grow into their forms until much later of what they were going to be able to do, other than the twins who could just disappear.
Yeah, I didn't get a great impression though. Of course, she had the telepathic ability, but her whole obsession with touch is something that she almost wanted to bring out. And she, in a way, she brought him out of himself. She almost awakened his powers of making him aware. So I don't know. Maybe it would have helped with the morality of the kids if they stay together and feel together.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Different
Maybe
because it was very cold in that regard. He knew right from wrong, but he couldn't love anymore. So he gave the kids everything but love.
Mm. Oh, good point.
That's a good point. That she brought him. She brought him some sort of level of awareness.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of her ability was just to bring things out of people and help enhance them somehow. Because Lone definitely had. He was very animalistic prior to that encounter, and
Mhm.
he seemed to have a bit more of a self-realization after that.
Yeah.
So then I wonder what Mr. Q, what the father, I guess, Alicia ended up taking after him in a sense. Well, maybe not. I mean, I guess she learned all of her twisted, uh, you know, assumptions through him, which she then educated out of herself. I mean, but I guess I wonder what role he played other than helping to provide characterization for Alicia and Evelyn.
Mhm.
Because he's the only one I really couldn't see what thread, what his thread meant. Like, why? I guess Evelyn was supposed to be, pure and innocent. And
Mhm.
when he realized he had failed at that, that's why I thought he was going to kill Alicia. So,
Oh.
when he killed himself, I thought, was it because he realized he failed as whatever he was trying to do? Um,
No, I think it was because Lone told him to.
Alone what?
I interpreted as that Lone told them to kill himself afterwards. It kind of
Oh,
put the
that's
thought in his mind. Yeah,
oh yeah, I like that.
it didn't came from him. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Interesting. I didn't get that.
Much
That
more
makes
sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I just thought he had internalized his trauma, because he didn't see Alicia at that stage. Remember, he came home when she was trying to speak to him, and
Mm.
he had that glassy-eyed kind of thing. But again, that glassy-eyed is someone under somebody else's control rather than just their trauma. I hadn't really thought about that. But very nice, Susanna. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I wasn't giving Lone as much agency as you noticed in him, and that's pretty cool, actually. So it's really subtle,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but it's there. Yeah, yeah,
There is a lot between the lines. Yeah.
yeah.
The interesting thing for me, especially with going through that psychiatrist bit with Stern, is that book 3 almost mirrors it in some ways. This sort of unpacking through memory and going backwards. It's almost like Jerry used what he learned through Stern to suppress Hip, as it was, and how to do that in some ways, and using Baby to do it, which I thought, one part of that chapter 3, I was like frustrated, like they'd use the same trick again, but again, it makes complete sense within the framework of what Jerry's very limited understanding of himself and the world kind of came from. So it did work very well in that way.
Mhm.
Yeah. And if Hip hadn't been such a strong character, he had a very strong psyche, he might have succeeded. Yeah. It was genius because they mentioned the two boys in the orphanage, and we see what happened to Jerry, and then we see where Hip is going, and Hip isn't mentioned at all for most of the book. And then you just for pages and pages it's like, okay, how does this happen? And then when everything comes together, it's genius.
It's a great character, I have to say. Again, they introduce a sort of quote unquote new character for chapter 3 to base it around their experience, and then have I think we realize it's probably Janie quite quickly, because that seems to be the character that it's going to be. The only question then is Hip just another name for somebody else at that stage. We weren't quite sure, but then when we get get into the last part of that chapter, we get a sense of kind of his military history and kind of the events that happened around that. And we unpack it at the same time as him, because it's this really nice thing of Janie knows everything. It's almost like a godlike complex, but knows that it's ineffective just to tell him, because he has to work it out himself, and knows every time he dreams and every time he thinks, he extracts just a little bit, but he has somebody there to make sense of it for him, which is really really satisfying, I think, to read again. The further I got into that last part of the book, the slower I was reading it, is the more that you kind of had to process, a bit like Hip himself was like, oh, right, okay, so that means that means that means that, and it sort of slowed everything down, which is almost the opposite of what usually happens when you get towards the end of the book. What's exciting, it kind of speeds up on you, and I found the opposite, actually.
Yeah, I really like the way she explained it to him about why she can't just tell him. Like when she pointed out that she had tried placing the rod in his hand so many times, and
Yes.
it took him a while to realize that it was there and understand its significance. So yeah, I really like that explanation she gave him, and then his own internalization of that, and like realizing he needs to work it out for himself.
Oh yeah, it was,
Something else I enjoyed we haven't talked about yet is the anti-gravity device.
Yes.
And I like that he put that in there. I think that's been a long, I think within whatever national security or whatever, there's like this long running search for, how to develop anti-gravity, because that's like one of the, like a source of infinite power,
Yeah.
and just that this baby has the answer, and could direct someone to build the device. And that plays into something I've always enjoyed, that, we know that walking around the earth, there are people who have brilliant ideas that just for whatever reason either may not be noticed or may not ever come to fruition, And I just kind of like the way he put that out there, and kind of played with that. And I don't know if there is another deeper piece of symbolism to that or not, but I liked just that thread of what was going on.
Yeah, that ties into the he mentions that, and he mentions a couple other bigger picture problems that are associated with the existence of these people, and how they could be, taking advantage of, or what have you, or or use this technology for not so great purposes, or what have you. But it's just like barely mentioned in the background. But I was actually glad that it was, though, that that it wasn't just an isolated bubble that this story was happening in. That there were some outside stuff that could be involved eventually with this group.
Yeah.
Even though eventually he kept the story with these characters, but it was just these few mentions here and there about a bigger picture that could happen, in the future, or what have you. So it's pretty. I liked how he did that,
Yeah.
and I liked how he mentions at the end, or towards the end, when Kip is talking with Jerry and they're working out whatever it is, but uh, how he mentions to Jerry that humanity is his mother and father, and
Yeah.
um, and humanity will help you, like that he should be helping humanity, and humanity will help you for it, because it will produce more like you, and you'll no longer be alone. And that whole spiel about the relationship between humanity and this gestalt is not a shouldn't be adversarial, and it should be more of a a thing where they work together and stuff like that. That has very, of course, X-Men vibes on that front as well. But it's just amazing uh, how many. I couldn't stop thinking about X-Men when I was reading this. It just kept
Well,
popping in my head because the X-Men have silly technological stuff too, like anti-gravity, what have you. So it just kept popping up.
yeah, it's interesting because the themes are the same, and there's no doubt that you can't not think about it. But the way that it approaches the superpower element is different, because obviously the X-Men
Yes.
have their own individual
Right.
abilities that they can enforce in order, whereas this is more the kind of the Voltron thing that I was kind of talking about at the start.
Yeah.
The kind of that they need each other, and there's a reliance on each other because of that. So I liked how it was the same but different as well, which I think it's always nice to examine an issue from multiple takes.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more differences than the superhero books, but the similarities are glaring, though.
Yeah.
I really liked in the end when the other Gestalt entity started speaking to this one once it acquired morality. It had that feel of an alien civilization coming in contact with humans when they realize that, okay, now they're past the point where they'll destroy themselves internally. I think there are a few books based on that trope, but I liked that, and that they were not. I don't fully know how I feel about the fact that all the biggest advances in human technology were sort of nudged in that direction by Gestalt entities, that they planted ideas in the heads of like various people who needed said nudging in the right direction. But yeah, that also actually has a bit of an X-Men feel to it, and like, retrospectively, here's all the things that we influenced over the years. But yeah, I think it was a nice closure of the book. Philosophically, I might take issue with it, but
Well, it's sort of links to Plato's theory of knowledge acquisition, that we have the knowledge and it's unlocked, and that sort of uses that idea, the baby's idea, that it sort of supplies the keys to unlock that knowledge because it exists in the world already, which I thought was quite nice. I mean, they didn't. But I think Jared said earlier, they didn't delve too deep into some of these, how it works, but they just loosely referred to them and just kind of let it sit back and let it breathe, because it sort of wasn't what the book was about in its own way, the philosophy or otherwise. It was more about the existence of this next generation of being and its ability to exist within a world, not because it has morality, but because it has an ethos or an ethics to it of how it should engage with the world, and that humanity in it were sort of one, rather than in opposition to each other, which again, very X-Men as well, in this kind of this exploration of how humanity wanted to suppress the other one.
Yeah, but that is a question whenever there's superheroes. That question is always there. How do you apply the same laws, the same morality to beings that are so different, and in many ways, I don't want to say superior to good. Where is the scale? But that have abilities that cannot be constrained within the laws, within even the laws of physics. If you're going to go in that direction, and I think there's a lot of similarities, like Dr. Jean Grey, Jeannie. Come on, just that one was glaring, and the powerful brain, but trapped in the body, defenseless body. There are a few similarities there.
Yeah, little Professor X-ray, yeah.
But the moral questions, yes, that in pretty much every superhero story, who watches the Watchmen, who, how it's that dilemma, how fast, what rights do they have to control humanity, and to what degree, and vice versa, should we eliminate these people just because they can be a threat to us, or just try to use them for the best ability? Should we use them at all? Well, I guess we don't have to worry too much about it, because we don't have superheroes, I don't think, unless they are very well hidden. But we do have geniuses. We do have people that don't confirm, and more there's this idea that we have to confirm. Everything has to be brought down to ideally the lowest common denominator, so no one feels excluded, no one feels bad about themselves. And I think that's bad for humanity to some degree, or as bad as elevating just selected individuals. It's hurtful. So it does give a lot to think about at the end. I don't agree with everything, but in this scenario, if this was reality, it was a good solution. Yeah.
So I want to ask what I'd asked before. How is this sci-fi? It's speculative. I mean, we have anti-gravity, and so I started thinking, is it pseudoscience? Is that where they're, the telepathy and I mean, it's fantastical in some ways, but then it is drawing from things that we consider to be human qualities or human potentials.
Well, I think he's proposing it as a part of natural evolution, and so that's how it ties into science, and that's what makes it that science fiction is that tie into a scientific field that take it or leave it for what it is. That's what he's proposing is it's a part of evolution, so it's a part of the scientific world. So therefore, you call it science fiction.
And sometimes I think the genre really doesn't matter if it's a great story, but so it's almost like, I don't know, I felt like, were they shoehorning this into sci-fi because it's just so good, or but
it has more sci-fi than the Book of Skulls, for example. And
that's a great point. Yeah,
because it is speculation.
Yeah.
It's the question time eternal even these days. Just most books have some sort of speculative element in them at some sort, even very straight fiction, and the lines become blurred the more that you do it, and because marketing things basically force you to be hard about your lines often when you're buying books, to say, oh, I don't like science fictionist books, but yet you will read many a book that has speculative elements in it, like Midnight's Children. Most people wouldn't consider to be a science fiction book, but it's actually quite similar in a lot of its ideas to here about this kind of telepathy and things that are going along, and the two things are supposedly in very diverse genres, but they actually are reasonably similar in the ideas that they kind of put forward. So yeah, make all books science fiction. I mean, there you go.
We are sure that this is the science fiction masterwork series, not the speculative fiction masterwork.
Yeah, that's true.
Could go either way.
It could go either way, indeed. Yeah.
I can only say FF, so could be either way.
That's true. Yeah.
Everything's fantasy.
Yeah. I do like the term speculative better, I guess. But I've loved science fiction for years. I just see it as a marketing term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often stories can be more effective, especially I think in this case, because it is kind of playing on emotional kind of beats of how we treat other people, that the closer that it is to reality in the world that we know, the more effective the story that it is. Make this book about a group of people in a space opera. I don't think it's anywhere near as effective or relatable or any of those things. So you could have told a story in a far-flung future and made the science fiction element of it way bigger, but I think much more to the message, detriment of the message of the book,
Yeah.
You need that clash with reality, with what is comfortable, with what we consider to be real, to make it science fiction to some degree, because otherwise we are in fantasy. Yeah. If everything is alien to you, so yeah, sure, we'll go with it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Anything else before we wrap up?
No.
No,
Really
good book.
Out.
Good book. Go out
Another
and get
book that I would never pick up otherwise.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'm so glad I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. Cool. Yeah, then let's wrap up. We will be reading once again Man Plus in the month of February, then A Case of Conscience by James Blish, and that's March. And wait, the final book, The Centauri Device by M. John Harrison. I closed my Worlds Without End browser tab. But yeah, that's what we're reading for the next 3 months. Once again, if you'd like to join us, please check out the Patreon forum. That's where we do all the planning. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.